the kill ratio went up dramatically. Today, modern planes like the F-15 carry a whole range of weapons, including AMRAAM air-to-air missiles.
The F-15 is capable of carrying the Sidewinder missile as well as the AMRAAM on the wing station pylons. On the fuselage, we can carry the AMRAAM as well as the AIM-7 Sparrow, and then the fighter pilot's favorite, the gun, on the other side.
Spitfires, Mustangs, Hellcats, F-4s, MiGs, proven weapons, proven killers. In just 40 years, an airframe barely capable of getting off the ground had strapped on guns, bombs, and missiles to become a deadly assassin. But to become an awesome supersonic fighter, it had to develop some internal muscles.
The speed with which it went made it almost impossible for you to bring your guns to bear on it.
Today's fighters are the fastest weapons on the battlefield. The secret? Under the hood, they're packing some serious power. The F-22 Raptor has two 35,000-pound thrust-class jet engines, delivering a maximum speed of 1,600 miles per hour. Go back a century when the Wright brothers took off for the first manned flight. Their ground speed was no more than 7 miles per hour. They used a pusher engine placed behind the pilot. Piston-driven, the pusher did what it said on the can, pushed the aircraft through the air.
Pusher engines were used early in World War I because it offered the pilot great visibility. By having the engine behind him, he did not have to worry about the propeller spinning in front of him.
But having the engine and propeller right behind the pilot also had a significant drawback.
The aircraft hit the ground or hit the water. Since the engines were located behind the pilot, they would break free and come down and land on the back of the pilot's neck and would correspondingly kill him.
By the end of the First World War, the pusher was out. Propellers went from the back to the front, and the engine pulled the aircraft through the air. And with the invention of an interrupter gear in 1915, pilots could shoot forwards through their propeller, eliminating the need for rear gunners. As a result, fighters became lighter, smaller, and faster. Now, pilots wanted to fly higher. In World War I, pilots had quickly established that height gave them an advantage in dogfights and also provided safety from ground fire. But existing engines struggled at altitude.
As an aircraft climbs, the air gets thinner. Of course, there's less oxygen, and on an engine, the power will drop off. With the Allison engine, it had a power ceiling of about 15,000 feet.
The higher you go, the thinner the air gets, reducing the amount of oxygen intake to the engine. When mixed internally with the fuel, it's less combustible, resulting in less power. A solution was needed, and designers soon found it. Engines like the famous Rolls-Royce Merlin used a supercharger, an air compressor that forced more air into the combustion chamber. More air meant more oxygen. More oxygen meant more power. More power meant more height.
Once you put the Packard-built Rolls-Royce Merlin engine into the P-51, you discover that it's capable of operating up to 40,000 feet. Once you put the Merlin engine into the P-51, you find you can go at almost 440 miles an hour. The key modification that turns the Mustang into the brilliant fighter aircraft that it was, the key invention was sticking the right engine into that aircraft.
Equipped with the Merlin and extra fuel tanks, the P-51 could fly a phenomenal 7.5 hours. This meant it had the range to escort American bombers all the way to Germany and back again.
They get rid of their long-range wing tanks before the fight, and down they go for the kill.
Story goes, once Goering looked up one day and saw the Mustangs in the contrails overhead and said the war is lost.
The P-51 was one of the last fighter aircraft propelled by piston engines. The Merlin had made it one of the fastest fighters on the block. But when the first generation of jet engines hit the skies, the P-51 was history. The origins of jet technology go back to the 1930s, when scientists around the world tried to find a faster engine. One of them was a British RAF pilot, Frank Whittle.
He was studying the gas turbine to see whether it could be applied to aeronautics as a means to drive the airplane propeller, but was finding that this was really almost too difficult. And then he perceived the turbojet and discovered that indeed jet propulsion appeared to be the way to go.
Jet engines work by sucking in air at the front with a fan. A compressor compresses the air before it's passed through a combustion chamber. There, the air is sprayed with fuel and ignited. The burning gases expand and blast out through the nozzle at the back, creating thrust. Today, most planes use jet engines, but in the 1930s, Whittle's pioneering work was ignored by the British Air Ministry. Even so, he didn't give up. In 1930, he patented the idea himself and continued his research.
His way of fighting the war was to produce a turbojet airplane. So all these wretched things that went on to stultify the development of the turbojet in this country were very, very frustrating for him, because he really wanted to produce a war machine.
The clock ticked. Whittle's patent for the engine lapsed. Around the same time, a German physicist, Hans von Ohain, started working on a similar device, an engine capable of propelling an aircraft without a propeller.
For a long time after the war, Whittle insisted that Ohain had seen Whittle's expired patent and had copied Whittle's invention, and that he, Whittle, was the inventor of the jet engine. After the Second World War, the two of them get together, they discuss their inventing processes, and both Ohain and Frank Whittle appear to have been convinced that each of them developed the jet engine independently.
Whittle hoped his jet engine would help the Allies win the war. But it was the Germans who won the race to produce the first operational jet fighter. In the summer of 1944, they unleashed the Me-262.
Now that one would come out of nowhere at you, and even the speed with which it went made it almost impossible for you to bring your guns to bear on it.
The 262 had a top speed of 540 miles per hour, making it the fastest fighter in the world. But for all its extra speed, the 262 was not going to be a war winner. It came too late, too few were built, and its maneuverability at lower speeds was questionable. In fact, American P-51s found they could sometimes catch and destroy the enemy jets.
We were escorting the bombers, and just as the B-17s started dropping their bombs, we were hit by a swarm of Me-262s, the German jet. And I was up high at about 26,000 feet. I looked down and I saw this Me-262 coming in behind one bomber and blowing it up. At that time, I rolled over and put full throttle and started down at him. By the time I got within firing range, he had blown up his second B-17, and I started firing, and I started getting hits in his left engine.
The Me-262 was piloted by German ace Walter Schuck. Walter had 207 victories to his credit, but in P-51 pilot Joey Peterbers, he finally found his match.
When I was shot down in my Me-262, I pushed the plane downwards, so my plane only got hit once. I dived into a cloud, and as an experienced pilot, you know that you should not come out in the same spot. They wait for you above it. I turned 45 degrees in the cloud. They kept looking for me, but I was gone.
For 60 years, Joey had no idea what had happened to his adversary. But then, out of the blue in 2005, he received a phone call and an invitation to meet Walter. Over a couple of beers, the German admitted that he eventually had to bail out of his Me-262.